So welcome everyone to our free webinar session presented by Change Connect and sponsored by Sabre Limited. I'm excited to introduce today's topic, which is 5 things manufacturing companies should know about change management. I'll take a moment to introduce myself. I'm Donna Simonovic, the marketing manager here at Sabre Limited, and our expert presenter today is Arash Rahimpour, lead consultant at Change Connect. Sabre Limited is an expert in Microsoft Dynamics Business Central ERP implementation and training for the manufacturing industry. Change Connect offers customized solutions for small to mid-sized businesses with a focus on sales transformation to help them work more efficiently and effectively. We're estimating that today's webinar will take about 45 minutes of your time. All of our webinars are recorded and loaded to YouTube, so be sure to go to our Sabre Limited YouTube channel to check out more videos and subscribe to our channel so that you receive the notifications when new content is added. Or you can check in the chat window in this webinar for the direct link to subscribe. To ensure the best quality, everyone will be on listen-only mode, but if you do have any questions or comments, go ahead and submit those by clicking on the chat icon and then typing your question in the pop-up chat pane, and we'll answer your questions at the end of the session. So now I'd like to hand it over to Arash to begin our webinar. Go ahead.
Thanks, Donna, and it's a pleasure to be here with everyone. I am honored to be invited to do this presentation for all the participants and of this webinar. We will be talking about, as Donna said, 5 things that manufacturing companies should know about change management. And so without any delay, let's get started on the topic. So let me introduce myself first of all. My name is Arash Rahimpour. I am a certified change management practitioner. I'm also a dad of a 6-year-old boy and a 3-year-old girl who obviously keep my day and my week and all my time busy. And whenever I do have some free time, my wife and I, we love food. We're foodies. We love to eat it, make it, blog about it. And once we could actually go and eat at restaurants, we'll probably do a lot more of that. But of course, we're not here to talk about me and what I like. We're here to talk about change management and the impact that it has on the manufacturing industry. Now, of course, there are multiple reasons why an organization needs to go through change. Whether it is a cultural change that we're trying to do, whether it's a leadership transition, maybe a market expansion, merger, acquisition, or restructuring. Now, I know here within this context of change management, we're obviously talking about the digital transformation that organization and manufacturers need to go through, and that is at the core of what we do at change management. Now, of course, change is one of the elements that is a constant in our days, in our lives, and change is a very important key factor of organization and manufacturers to be able to find cost-effective way and efficient way of delivering their products. And this is regardless of size or what type of manufacturers you are. So let's look into these 5 key elements. And the first one is communication. Communication is key. And first things first, we need to start with the why. Now, when I say why, I mean, why are we doing this project? Why is this change happening at our organization? Why are we making these transformation? What is the purpose and the reason behind it? And that starts by communicating that why down to everybody that is involved at an organization. But then what is also quite important is to make sure that everyone that is involved in the change understand what's in it for them. It is a very key aspect of change management to be effective, is that understanding at the individual level of what's in it for me to go through this change. And let's recognize that for most people, change isn't something that they're comfortable with. Change isn't something that we do with enthusiasm, unfortunately. We're an animal of habits. We like our habits, and change comes and disturbs the habits that we are used to doing. And so for change to be successful, that understanding at the individual level of what's in it for them is key to their willingness to participate in the change itself. Now, upstream and downstream effects are critical. Change doesn't happen just at one department, one area of the business. Change happens upstream and downstream, and the effects are across an entire organization. So keep in mind that there will be multiple departments impacted by the change. And so how are we going to make sure that each department has an ability of expressing what's happening, what's successful, the challenges that they're experiencing within their departments? And then, of course, not one person can be responsible for everything that needs to happen. We need to develop champions within each department that is being affected by change. It's those champions who are going to make sure that everyone within the department, within the team, follows the changes that have been adopted or put into the actual organization. And so that allows for a lot of collaboration to happen, for teams to work together interdepartmentally, understanding what each needs to do to ultimately be able to make the change happen. And that requires leadership. Leadership is one of the key parts of making sure that a change project is successful. When we talk about CEOs and business owners and presidents of organizations, i.e. leaders of manufacturer businesses, a communication and involvement from them increases the probability of a change management project to be successful by 50%. It's a small involvement, but it is a trickle, it's a top-down effect that leadership involvement has. And that ultimately will increase your chances of success. The success rate will be significantly greater when we have all of these elements together. Now let's look at file sharing capabilities. Well, it's going to be easier, it's going to be better, and it's going to be faster. When we look at digital transformation within an organization, it does change the ability and the way that we are sharing information across departments, across individuals, across teams. And so having an environment that allows for easier, better, and faster seems to be given. That why would anyone not be willing to do the work and the steps needed to make sure that the change, in this case, the digital change is happening, the transformation is happening. But I think a lot of people, when they look at any change that happens, they see it from a more complicated, more difficult and slower process in all aspects of what they do. When we look at file sharing, it's actually the opposite. It like I said, it does create an environment that's easier, better, and faster. And ultimately, what we want is to, again, communicate this to everybody so that they understand the benefits that is gained from a transformation like this. Visibility and transparency, when you have both of them together, it does an incredible thing where you see the impact in the change management itself. So what can you do to make sure that there is visibility and transparency? Well, from a leadership standpoint, it gives you that visibility and transparency across all aspects of the business itself. That alone allows you to be not supervising is not a good choice of word, but overlooking the change, the transformation that is happening at your organization. And that visibility and transparency allows you to have the greatest level of impact that you can bring to your transformation, to this digital transformation, to this change management project that you're looking of implementing within your organization. Now, of course, adoption is a very key part in making sure that change happens. Keep in mind that change management and just change in general is not a linear, rigid process. Change requires for everyone, for the adoption to happen, for there to be flexibility. Flexibility around allows us to move with the change itself. We cannot predict what will happen as a result of the change and the process that we'll go through when we are going through this transformation. And so being flexible really allows organizations to make the changes that they need throughout the transformation time, and making sure that the rate of adoption, the success rate, is actually much higher. Now, of course, being flexible is not the only it's not the only element of a successful adoption rate. We need to make sure that our intent beyond what we're trying to do is clear, is communicated, and is being followed through. Intent is very important in a lot of the things that we do. And in change, it is also very critical that is understood. And intent goes back to that initial, why are we doing this and what's in it for me? One of the things I'm sure you've started to recognize is a lot of these best practices across that we have for manufacturing comes down to a few different key elements that need to be in place. And then when we have a focus, a clear vision, a clear direction as to what we are trying to accomplish, it really allows us to make sure that we are assuring that the transformation that we are creating in our organization actually happens. Now, we all know Bobby Kennedy, at least most of us of my generation and older will know who Robert Kennedy is, and I'm hoping that most of you do as well. And he was quite an interesting character with some really forward-looking ideas. One of the things he said was that progress is a fine word, but its driving force is called change. And change has its enemies, and it is true. Change comes with a lot of pushback. And it goes back to what I talked about at the beginning, which is at the core of us as human beings, we are hesitant when it comes to change. Because change is difficult. We don't know what is around the corner of change. There is a lot of inability of knowing exactly what the future holds for us when we do change. But like I said as well, there's only few constants in life. Death is obviously the obvious one, and not to be morbid, but change is the only other constant that we experience in life. And so it's important that we shift our views on change and we try to drive change with as little stickiness, with as little obstacles as possible. Well, if it's not clear, communication is going to be at the core of the ability for this transformation at your organizations to happen. Why is this change happening? Do you know yourself that question? Because it is important that you understand why is the change happening. And along the lines of understanding the why the change is happening, do we also understand what success looks like? What are we aiming towards? And can we communicate that success down to everybody within the organization so that we make sure that everyone within the organization is on the same page and everyone understands why we're doing this? Now, that's at the organizational level. Let's look at it at the individual level, because an organization is individuals make the organization, is what I mean to say. And so for a change to happen at the organization level, it is critical that that change happen at the individual level. So do everyone within your organization that the change is affecting understand what's in it for them. The reality is that if individuals within your organization don't know what's in it for them, their desire to actually go ahead and participate in the change, impact the change, the transformation will not be there. And when that desire isn't there, there's not much that will follow beyond that. Assuming that everyone within the organization has a clear understanding of why this is happening, of what's in it for them, the next thing that really needs to be communicated is, well, what is my part in making sure that the change happens and is successful? It is one thing to understand it at an organization level. It's another thing to understand what's in it for me. But understanding what you need to do to make sure that the transformation happens and that the change is successful is equally important. It could be a situation where you will have individuals who will actively be the ones who are leading the change. Others will need to support the change. Whatever the scenario might be, understanding what your part is going to be half the battle and sometimes in making sure that the change happens. So I know I've talked about a few different things, and even though this was supposed to be a top 5, clearly it's the top 6. But let me summarize it for everybody, because at the end of the day, it is a simple thing to do. Communication is key. If that hasn't been, if this isn't clear, let me restate it. Communication is key to a successful change management project. Without the communication, change will not happen. It is the driver, the vehicle for change. Remember, change is a team sport. You cannot go through this change by yourself. It will impact an entire organization. So make sure that all aspects of your organization is clear and is involved in the change itself. Improved efficiency is at the core of any change management initiative. And I think sometimes that is forgotten. All change management initiative, whether it's a digital transformation, whether it is for manufacturing industry or anything else, the improvedness of the efficiency, the increase in the performance, whether it is from a cost saving or an increase in efficiency, is really what we're trying to achieve. And visibility and transparency are two of the main impacts of an organization that will gain a successful change management adoption. The important part of the visibility and the transparency, whether it comes from a leadership standpoint or it is at the people level, allows for an organization to better understand what elements of their change adoption has worked and what hasn't. Change takes time. There will aspects of your change that will be adopted right away, and others will take time. But that visibility and that transparency will give you those key insights to know what to do next. Along the same lines, keep in mind that change, like I said, is a dynamic process. It is not linear. It is not rigid. And so it really requires leadership and anybody that's involved in the transformation to be flexible, to understand what the intent that this project has, and to be focused on bringing this project to the finish line. And of course, Worth mentioning it again, communication, communication, communication. The better the communication, the better chances your change management, your transformation, your digital transformation project is successful. Now, I'm sure you have a lot of questions, so I transfer the conversation back to Donna to see if there are any questions that I can address.
Thanks, Arash. That was a great presentation. So we have a couple of questions that came in through the chat.
Sure.
The first one is, if there is only one thing we can do to make sure the change happens, what would that be?
Great question. And at its core is that communication element. I think the presentation, really did emphasize on the importance of communication. And if there's one thing that I want you to take away is that the better your practice of communicating the reasons around this change and this transformation, the better your chances of that change and transformation to actually be successful.
Great. The next question.
Yeah, go ahead.
That came up was, what are the major barriers in making sure change is adopted?
Oh, that's a really great question. There are several major barriers for change to happen. The first one is the understanding that change happens at the individual level of an organization. I think there is a perceived that, well, as long as I create this change and I bring this change into my organization, then I will have everybody adopt it and for the change to happen. Unfortunately, one of the things that we've seen in the industry is that that does not work. And as a result of that, if you understand that change needs to happen at the individual level, a lot of those barriers are there. So it might go back to something that I've talked about, and I hope that you recognize these barriers as an understanding on the part of these individuals what's in it for them. Like I said, if they don't know what's in it for them, chances are they're not going to go ahead with change. It's also a barrier in making sure that they understand what their part is. And then I would say the third barrier that we need to overcome is that we need individuals within each group to be champions of that change. And so by not having someone on the floor level, at the ground level, I should say, who will make sure that everyone within their group is adopting the change, that in itself is a huge barrier. Because without that individual, again, change is less likely for it to happen.
Great. And we have one other question that's come through. What
Sure.
can managers do to help with the change?
Well, managers play a very key part in making sure that the change is successful. ProSci, who does the change management program, who is an international organization that is a body around change managers, they've surveyed thousands of organizations on their adoption of change. And one of the key parts when it comes to managers and their responsibility is the impact that it has when they are the ones who are communicating downstream to their team all those elements of why the change is happening, what's in it for them, what they can do. Because when we have these managers involved in the project, what we've seen is that these transformation projects have a 70% success rate. So what managers can do is being involved, being the champions of their team, understand also what are some of the challenges that individuals within their team are experiencing as a result of the change. And that allows them to come up and collaborate with their peers in coming up with alternative strategies to make sure that the change happens.
Great. Well, that looks like it's all the questions we have for today. If any
Well,
other questions come up about how Change Connect can help with change management at your manufacturing company, or you'd like to book a meeting, feel free to reach out to me and I'll be able to help. My contact information is on the screen. For more information about Sabre Limited, you can visit us at sabrelimited.com. And I'd like to thank everyone who attended, and we hope you have a great rest of the day.
Thank you for watching our videos. Please follow our channel by clicking here to stay up to date with the latest content, or click here for more great videos. Don't forget to visit our website at sabrelimited.com. We look forward to seeing you next time.